Okay, and welcome to today's version of the the Times, the Customs recordings. A look at the absurdities of modern life and how we all deal with them. Today we are coming live from the Isle of Man as usual with an exclusive view of one of the finest bays in the British Isles. Or so we are told by our elected representatives here in the Isle of Man. Now, I have not visited enough bays in the British Isles to quantify that statement, but it is undoubtedly a rather nice view here. However, the late afternoon, shall we say, late afternoon drawing of the sun, however pleasant it is, has been somewhat tainted by the salutations of an excited newsreader I heard on my way home, suggesting that there's been a rather nasty outbreak of conflict in Kashmir regarding the Indian and Pakistan nations. I have to say I have no particular allegiance to either of those nations. Therefore, I am proportionately not particularly concerned at this present moment in time about it having a direct impact on my own life. Now, I appreciate that may come across as callous and uncaring. I would counter that by saying that rather that than the shrieking platitudes, empty platitudes of the usual attention-seeking twerps who like to be seen as earnest and caring and all the rest of it when they are anything but. I do, however, have a general philanthropy towards those involved, and I hope it stops soon, I have to say. However, the news did stir some feelings inside of me regarding terrorism and the mass hysteria surrounding it and how we all deal with it. Now, I'll probably split this video into two parts, and I'll deal with the latter first, how we all deal with it. The trouble is, both sides, and by both sides I mean the believers who parrot whatever they hear on Sky News as gospel, and the conspiracist theorists who say that all terrorism is false flags, etc., etc., are as bad as each other and are completely insufferable. I will go into that more in the next video. However, this one I want to focus on the how we deal with it, and the point I'm getting to is that we all like to have a definitive answer regarding terrorism. We are all trying to make sense of it and understand why it is happening and who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. I'll give you an example of that. Only last week I was trying to decipher exactly what was going on with the current situation with regards to terror in the British Isles. I was in London, and I came to the distinct conclusion at the end of my trip that the world's most vocal geopolitical experts in this country are actually masquerading as small town taxi drivers, unemployed labourers in public houses, and anonymous internet forum users. For example, I was in a cab in the centre of London, and the message from the driver was very clear, that the answer to all terrorism was to blow the bloody lot of them to kingdom come. That's the only way. There were no concessions or diplomacy from him. The only answer, according to this particular geopolitical expert, was to blow the bloody lot of them to kingdom come. I have to admit, it was a new way of thinking for me. I won't lie, for all my scepticism, my past scepticism of those charged with looking after our safety, namely the security forces, the police, MI5, 6, all that type of thing, the army, I got out of that cab thanking the heavens that British foreign policy wasn't decided by a black cab driver in Shoreditch who used the word "facking" a lot. I then moved on to a local East End boozer where a labourer who on first glance would not have come across as an expert in the field of geopolitics blew my conspiracy theories out the water by observing that no one can ever trust a Muzzer. Enoch Powell was right. Later on in that night, a fellow geopolitic who was masquerading as a barmaid put my doubting mind at rest slightly by proclaiming that she had no idea who the baddies are anymore, but one thing I do know, we Brits are the goodies. The next day, a mechanic who was tending to a bike, of all things, was also a highly regarded oracle on geopolitics, it turned out, within London circles. He re-energised certain feelings inside me that it's all a big conspiracy by suggesting that terrorism was all about the oil in it, or the heroin trade, or the weapon sales. One of them. Always follow the money, mate. Again, I then, in my hotel room, I logged onto a well-known internet debating portal, but was left even more confused by the highbrow analysis I encountered. One such expert, who identified himself with the name Wes, captured the prevailing mood with his chanting of "We want nukes, we want nukes." Yet on the other hand, another expert named Liberal Len suggested that Britain has reaped what it had sown. After 1,000 years of war, bullying and colonialism, is it any wonder that some people really want to fight back? All this left me rather unsure, and my initial point, i.e. trying to get to the bottom of what was going on with terrorism, was not really answered, and I'd even lost track of what even the question was. Nevertheless, the first point stands. Terrorism is here to stay, and we all have to deal with it as best we can. Now, we all deal with it in different ways. I personally tend to deal with it by simply trivialising it and referring to it as bants. So when I hear stories of the latest ISIS atrocities, I tend to roll my eyes like a sweet-natured primary school teacher lightly disciplining the class clown and simply label them as those cheeky jihadis up to no good again. I take the theory further by stating that the Taliban's activities I tend to regard as a bit of light revelry on the highways of Tora Bora by the plucky camel jockeys. When a bomb goes off under a off-duty police officer's car somewhere in Ulster, I tend to refer to the real IRA as the lads having a few light-hearted lols with the peelers. You're getting the idea with this. When the white supremacy movement bombs a mosque or such like, I tend to just write it off as a few chaps having a minor beef with our coloured chums. I accept this is rather blasé and childish, however it works great for me. I am officially not scared by terrorists. However, I am on the Isle of Man, as I stated. The most extreme terrorism I have ever encountered was to come across some Manx Gaelic scrawled on the road suggesting that English financiers should perhaps leave the island and leave us in peace. This did not send me, or certainly didn't send the English financiers, into a state of panic with regards to being the target of terrorism. I, like many other Manxmen, do have some sympathy with the Gaelic utterings, or a degree of it. However, it did fail in becoming terrorism, as the island went on to become one of the strongest offshore financial centres in the world, on the back of the said English financiers. So it wasn't a particularly successful campaign by the Manx nationalists. But anyway, the point is, would I be so blasé if I was caught up in a terrorist attack, given that I am lucky enough to live in an area where, as I have just stated, the pinnacle is some scrawlings of Manx Gaelic on a rural road? I'd like to think I would be. Imagine I am in the centre of a terrorist attack in a city centre. A woman is cowering behind me at an upturned bench. She is on tenterhooks with every suspicious sound. I would attempt to be calm. I'd like to think I would be. the sounds of guns and bombs would abate slightly. She would calm ever so slightly, and we would look to make our escape. Then suddenly, the sound of gunfire would again close in on us. She would again go back to being a nervous wreck, and she would screech down my ear, "Oh my God, what is that noise? We are all going to die. What can we do? What can we do? What on earth is that noise?" Now, at this point, I'd like to think I'd have enough about me to reply calmly, "That noise, love? Probably the sound of 72 Hymens being smashed in the afterlife." Now, that is a bullish statement. Whether that would happen, I'm not convinced, but I would like to think it would. Anyway, that's how I deal with terrorism. You probably have your own way, so, well, all the best with it. And I will probably do a second part on terrorism another day. Cheers.